Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Arcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we'll look back on the movies, TV, games, people, and phenomena that we still love talking about all these years later, and ask ourselves why these bits of pop culture still enchant us today. This week, we'll be revisiting...
When it comes to video games, usually you talk about beating a game. But today we're talking about a game that beats you. We're talking about Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, also generally known as Punch-Out! Without the Mike Tyson. We'll talk about why in a bit. But I'm very excited to be talking about this classic, and I think this game is a stone cold classic, no matter how hard it is, and no matter how many times it beat me down. In fact, I can't think of a game people love more, despite the fact that almost nobody I know has ever beaten it. So, but of course, I am not doing this alone. I'm going to be stepping into the ring with one other guest today. He's been on the podcast many times before, including some old video game episodes, including Mega Man 2 and Simon's Quest, Super Mario Bros. 3, some other classic NES titles. Please welcome back to the podcast, comedian Rich Baker.
I drank to prepare for a podcast, and tonight I'm very prepared.
I must break you.
Yeah. I was debating on whether to open with that quote or join the Nintendo fan club today, Doug. So
yeah. Well, I'm hoping this episode gets the Nintendo seal of quality. Because this is a classic. I'm glad we're talking about Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!
Me too.
Yeah. So before we get into a lot of the ins and outs of the game, and there's actually some really interesting stuff to talk about, kind of around the game. Mm-hmm. And like as I alluded to, it's not actually it was Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, then it just became Punch-Out!. And so the history of this game is actually kind of interesting too. But let's get to the meat of it. Why are we talking about this today? Tell me your nostalgic memories of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!.
My dad was one of the biggest boxing fans I've ever personally known, and he loved boxing through and through. And I didn't much care for it, but I would watch the fights with him just to try and have like a relationship kind of a deal. And so when the thing I loved the most, video games, which up to this point had been Atari and Super Mario and Duck Hunt and that, this was super early in Nintendo. And then I remember thinking like so Mike Tyson has a game and it's boxing, and my world and my dad's world collide. He never played it with me, but I didn't care. I played the hell out of this game. If I were to add all the numbers of hours logged in different games, I don't know what would be number one, but this would be like contender, top 5 definitely.
Yeah, this is probably one of the Nintendo games I spent the most time playing that I didn't actually own. I didn't, for whatever reason, I never bought it. Parents never bought it for me, but this game was so popular, many of my friends had it, and it was such an easy game to like throw on and go like, you want to play Punch-Out!? So I spent plenty of time playing it. That lack of owning it probably explains why I never got farther than a certain combatant that we'll talk about as we go through like the roster of fighters and stuff. But despite the fact that this game is punishingly hard, even for like, we talked about like some NES games that we played that were challenging, right? Like Super Mario Bros. 3 is challenging, but you can beat it.
Sure. Even
as a kid, if you're dedicated. We talked about Simon's Quest. That game isn't particularly hard. The challenge of that is mostly just the time and to spend navigating its weirdness. Mega Man 2. Again, most of these games, despite their challenges, you can muscle through. This one is extremely grueling, and it's amazing. Like I said, people still fucking love this thing, despite the fact that it usually, like I said, I don't know anybody who actually finished it. Did you actually beat Mike Tyson in this thing?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Amongst all my friends, I was the last one to beat it. And I was like desperately, because like there was a bunch of us gamer nerds that I kind of knew around this time of life, and I felt so inadequate that I was not the one who would finally beat Tyson. And so when I did, I remember running into the living room and, Mom, you got to get your camera. And, we're talking old, way before digital. You only had so many shots per film and you get developed. And I was like, Mom, take a picture of the screen. And it was me next to the screen winning. And my mom still has that picture and photo album to this day. I mean, I was so proud of that moment.
I mean, yeah, I have had that feeling in video games. Well, I want to talk about some of this game's descendants where that has definitely come into play. And I've had that feeling of elation of like beating a very difficult boss. And this game is really interesting. It is a boss rush, meaning it is a game that is just bosses.
Yep.
There's no levels. There's nothing else to do in between. It's just these boss challenges. Similar games in this genre would be like, Shadow of the Colossus is this. There's, like we talked about Mega Man 2, there's a boss rush in it where at a certain point they just give you, here's the 9 guys you fought before, but now do them all in a row. Yeah. And that's basically what this is. But I saw something, I was doing my research and someone had commented that like, it's secretly a puzzle game more than it is a boxing game. And to me, that was like, yes, that unlocks the whole thing, right?
Yep. Yeah. No, it's like the ring, like a boxing ring is not small, but like relative to these characters, like the ring in this game is way too big. And like in a boxing match, most of the time they're moving around the whole ring. This one, you're standing face to face, and it's not meant to simulate real boxing. There are some really cool elements of this game that do simulate real boxing, and we'll talk about that as we go. But like, if you know boxing, this game is not it.
Yeah, the experience of playing this game is not the experience of playing, say, like we talked about Street Fighter 2, right? Yes. Street Fighter 2 is very much like you have a set of moves, your opponent has a set of moves, and you're just doing your best to use your moves against theirs as the AI kind of, makes choices about how to fight you. This is different. The AI for these boxing opponents is extremely rigid. And so they don't just sort of organically fight you. They have a very distinct pattern. And the fun of the game is, how do I recognize this pattern and then exploit it?
Yeah, and then that's the surface. And then when you can beat it, just like doing that tactic, then you can start to find some deeper patterns and like, if a certain punch here or a certain dodge here will like decrease their their energy level or something like that. And there's all these little like pockets of deeper puzzle, putting together in this game, even beyond that.
So this is a good time. I think before we get into the mechanics of what this game is, I want to talk a little bit about its history, which is, I think, interesting.
Absolutely.
So this started life as a game called Punch-Out that was for arcades. And different than the NES version in a couple of respects. The key one is the view. So when you play this in an arcade, you would be looking from behind your, like basically towards your character's back. And so to make it work, your character ended up being this green wireframe that was transparent. So you could look through your character's back and see the opponent beyond as you were punching towards them. The NES was not capable of doing that. So what you get is your tiny little fighter, Little Mac, at the bottom of the screen, up, and you're sort of punching up at your enormous opponent relative to you. And I think that view really reinforces the puzzle nature of this, right? Because you aren't really thinking about like, time to punch here, time to punch there. It's more like, okay, if he's facing to the left, I can throw a right hook. If he moves his eyebrows just like some way, I know that's my signal. I can punch up and do some real damage with an uppercut. Yeah, that view made an enormous shift in how this game really plays, especially on the NES.
Yeah, and it's one of the many cases, and we've talked about this on previous episodes, where like the technical constraints actually wound up making the thing better. And I just remember, like, in RoboCop, they had this cool car for RoboCop, and they were like, well, we got to put him into a Ford anyway. And it was like, well, that kind of fits the whole narrative, right? And so, to me, he's Little Mac, and he's less than half the size of most of his opponents. And so, when you beat him, it feels this David Goliath thing of like, you're this little munchkin, man. Like, he's 107 pounds, according to, the stats. 107 pounds.
Not only is 107 pounds, according to the stats, this is the first time I noticed this, he's 17 years old. Yeah. So, a minor who's getting beat down by world champions, including Mike Tyson.
A very short minor. Yeah. Well, Mike Tyson, to be fair, was only 21 when this game. So.
That's true. But yeah, you are Ralph Macchio, basically.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the underdog story, it's very much, Rocky and Muhammad Ali like played into the hype that would become this game, 100%.
Yeah. So let me get into the thing I mentioned before, which is why is this not always Mike Tyson's Punch-Out? So the reason this happened was the game designers were aware of Mike Tyson, who was this up-and-comer at that time. And so they inked a deal with him for his likeness to use in the game, but it was a limited time thing. It was only for 3 years. And they were very lucky that in the period between when they clinched the deal with him, that he became the world champion, right? All of a sudden, by the time this game hit the shelves, Mike Tyson was a household name. It was a big fucking deal. But then by the time that deal ran out, he had been dethroned, I believe. And so there was less impetus to re-up the deal. Also, this is the early days of video games. People weren't really sure what to make of stuff like this, whether it'd be even worth re-upping it. So they began releasing a version of the game where the Mike Tyson character, it's just called Punch-Out, and Mike Tyson is replaced by a character named Mr. Dream, who has the same patterns, but it's not Mike Tyson. Actually, if anything, I've heard his likeness is based on Rocky Marciano. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then, of course, there were subsequent versions of this game. There's one for the Super Nintendo and later one for the Wii, both of which are fantastic.
Absolutely. I just want to go back real quick. An interesting thing about this game is in the arcades, it was 2 monitors,
right,
which had never been done before. And the only reason was because Nintendo had ordered too many monitors or had a surplus of monitors for some reason. And so they were like, okay, we have too many monitors. What are we going to do? Let's design a game that uses 2 monitors each, cabinet. And that's how Punch-Out was, it was a fix for a problem.
Have you ever seen one of those cabinets?
I played them.
Oh yeah, me too. I don't remember playing it much, but I do have a memory because of I remember in my head I was like, oh yeah, that green wireframe boxer. Like, why doesn't it look like that? Why didn't they bring it back? It was a unique, interesting artifact that you can still find in arcades here and there.
Yeah, back in the day, for any listeners who are much younger, arcades existed in a lot of places, and we had a couple of arcades in the 7-Eleven right down the street from where I grew up, and one of them was Punch-Out. And I didn't spend near as much time there as I would at other arcades that we'd go to for the arcades, but I remember playing it enough, and I do remember when the console came out, the game for Nintendo, and I was like, oh, this is different, but I didn't care because it was just so good that it was more of I forgot about it almost immediately.
Man, I have let's pull over the car here for a little arcade nostalgia, because they do still exist. There are some wonderful arcades, and particularly barcades is now the thing.
Yes.
Shout out to Ground Control in Portland, which rules. Yeah, that's one of the best barcades I've been to. But so did you have an arcade that was your arcade when you grew up?
Yeah, it was called Putt Golf and Games. There was a whole, mini green, and there was batting cages. But the thing I was there for was there was 2 floors and a pretty big amount of space. And it was just games. A few carny games skee ball, but for the most part, it was just cabinet arcade games, and it was, I mean, you could spend a whole day there every day as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, so there were two for me. There was one just like yours was attached to a mini golf course.
Yeah.
And so it was a little farther from our house, and so we'd go there. Like if we went to go play miniature golf, then like my dad and I, like after the round of miniature golf was over, it was time to go like grab a Mountain Dew and go to the arcade.
Sure.
For a little while. But the arcade that was like my home arcade that was much closer to where we lived was called Tilt. And it was in a mall. And one of the things I loved about it was that like arcades aren't like this now. And as a parent, I understand why, because you don't want to lose your kid in a place like this. But they were dark and you know, back then. So Tilt was like, it was black interiors and, just the neon of the cabinets glowing, playing Dig Dug and Dragon's Lair and all of that stuff. Like picture the scene of the arcade in Tron.
Yeah.
Picture that, like a little bit like that, where there's like almost a rock and roll feeling of like, this is a special, cool place. Cause like computers are new and weird and amazing. I love the old arcade aesthetic, which, again, for the like barcades will do this. I always thought if I fell over backwards into money or won the lottery or something, like I would quit my job and just open a barcade. That would be cool to just do that.
Absolutely. I don't know if, it was just coincidence for the same company. We had a Tilt in our local mall too. I didn't go to it as much because it wasn't nearly as big. And so, you'd have to wait a long time for some of the games because it's just very crowded. But yeah, we also had a Tilt.
What was next to ours? An Orange Julius. So there's
good times.
That's some serious 80s mall time.
Ooh, it is.
Yep. Go see the mall stuff from Stranger Things season 3. They recreate that pretty well. Actually, in season 2, there's an arcade scene that they do a good job of recreating what an 80s arcade would look like. So
yeah.
But yeah, that's where you'd find Punch-Out. Getting back to our subject of the day. And I'm glad you mentioned the thing about the monitors. That was a very interesting factoid to learn, that like this started life as so many of these things often do, like some weird business problem ends up creating something interesting.
Yeah.
So getting into what Punch-Out is, we can talk about it. I know most of you all have played this or have some idea what it's like. But as we said, it's a boxing match where you're at the bottom of the screen. Your big, very well animated sprite of an opponent is at the top. And that's key because unlike, say, the little Goombas of Super Mario Brothers or things like that, these characters are pretty large. They fill up, good, like a quarter of the screen or more. Yeah. But you need that because with the NES's weak resolution, right? Very large pixels. You have to be able to read all of their moves and tells to know, now it's time to throw a counterpunch or whatever you're going to do. If these characters were not so big and like detailed, this would not work. It would be a nightmare.
Yeah, and again, it goes, the bigger character makes it cooler that you're this little guy beating them. But also, as you said, the eyebrows, they have facial expressions. At the time, I remember just thinking it was cool, but I didn't really think about how, like, Bowser doesn't have an expression. He just jumps, you jump over him, and the bridge goes, and that's it. But, like, this game, they were personalities, and they were names, and they were countries, and they were records, but they were also, their face moved, and you could see kind of like those characters will always be with me as like I remember them as characters.
Well, and they have a whole lot of personality to them, right? Yeah. And again, that's part of the fun is that just like, this is a little more wrestling than boxing. Why hasn't that been invented yet? Anyway, boxing. I guess that's UFC, right? But basically, you get to know them. You like when you beat one of them. Yes, there's a satisfaction of beating a video game opponent, but because they have so much like character and they're kind of a personage on top of being an opponent. Like you kind of really have a feeling of like I'm in the ring with King Hippo or whoever it is.
Yeah. Well, the very opening screen of the game, you see a visual representation of Mike Tyson. It says Mike Tyson's waiting for your challenge. I mean, right away the game feels personal. It's like the big bad boss at the end is already talking to you and it's like, can't wait to see it kind of thing.
Yeah, and that opening title screen, it's just this like the boxing glove that comes at the screen, like it kind of punches.
Such good animation.
Punches
so
through.
Powerful. So powerful.
Yeah, they've got a good like wide world of sports motif, which I know they borrowed some of the music for like the title screen, literally from the wide world of sports.
Yeah,
and like as much as the NES can do, it really compared to say like the baseball games on the NES or football games, like this gives you a real sense of like I don't know, there's showmanship here.
Yeah, and again because it's all boss fights, the bosses. If they felt too similar, the game wouldn't have the appeal. It's all these, they're all from different countries. A few are from the same country, but for the most part, they're all representing something different. And they all have very different, there's a few different body types that get repurposed, of course. But, they definitely, Don Flamenco does not feel like Glass Joe, even though they're the same basic sprite.
Yeah, so this goes into kind of the stereotype stuff in the game, which this doesn't bother me as far as stereotyping because it's very over the top and it's mostly like kind of gentle, like, hey, in this country they like to eat a lot of this kind of food. It's a small world version of racism, right? Like that ride is also a bunch of stereotypes that you go through, but it's well-meaning and so when Don Flamenco comes out and he's a Spaniard with a rose in his teeth. Dancing his way in. It's charming, as opposed to being like reductive or a problem. Yeah.
I don't think, they changed vodka Drinkinski to soda Popinski. So, they're doing okay.
That's fair. I think, like these idiots are all drunks is probably not an okay stereotype, but like, okay, he likes his soda pop and they like to put the word insky at the end of things. That's fair.
I think the harshest stereotype is probably Super Macho Man, California boy.
That's true. They let when you fight them, they've got like a screen, right? They show your stats on one side and their stats on the other, and where they're from, and you get little bits of dialogue from them in there, text, as they trash talk you or whatever they're gonna say, and all of that has again like they're bringing in personality to this game, and it all comes through in the play. Like that's the really neat trick is that without any actual spoken dialogue, it's all just within like animations, sometimes before the fight starts as they like dance their way out from the corner. And then even during the fight, they've got little, things that they do that are, just flourishes that are not really necessary for anything other than to give you the feeling of like, I get who this character is through their animation.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, refereeing the whole thing is Super Mario. He's more just, I guess, regular Mario in this. But, even he'll have little word bubbles like knockout or every time he counts down 1, 2, 3, 4, little word bubbles. And it's noise. It's not him saying it, actually, because of Nintendo's, limited sound. But it definitely felt, especially for the time. And even still, honestly, it still feels like this is, the characters are talking to me.
Yeah, that kind of feeds into like the kinesthetics of the game, which are really good. Like it's very impressive when you like land an uppercut on one of these characters. It feels like you're landing a punch, even though all you're doing is tapping, up in the B button or whatever. Like there's something about the way, the feedback of it, the pacing of the animation of these punches, so that when you land a blow or when they land one on you, you somehow feel it to a degree.
Yeah. Way before rumble packs or whatever they were that made the controller vibrate. Like, the way the sound and the visuals work in concert, the punches feel like punches.
Again, it's extremely impressive given how primitive this is. Like this is pretty early on in the NES's life cycle. It came out
Yeah.
in 1987. You know, I mean, we talked about Super Mario Brothers 3, which is one of the last titles released for the NES. It's one of the, that's by that point they had really mastered the hardware in terms of graphics and sound and stuff. This is way before that, but like that feeling when you land that knockout blow and they kind of like the guy like does this serpentine like woo before collapsing.
Oh yeah, from one side of the ring to the other kind of thing. Yeah,
with a thud. Like
yeah.
it again, this should not land as hard as it does for how simplistic these visuals and sound effects are. I don't know how they make it work, but like every time it feels like, yes, I landed a blow that knocked this guy on his face.
Yeah. And my favorite sequence of that is the body type that's both Tyson and Piston Honda, which is, if you land an uppercut and they just kind of, gravity makes it look like they fall backward and they slip and their feet are kind of slipping underneath them as they fall. It's just such a satisfying, like I knocked down this giant and he just, whoa.
Yeah, they do all of that. What you've got the crowd, right? That's kind of like that roars, they fly,
Big
their
part of
cameras
it.
are flashing. There's that feeling of like I am in front of a crowd. They're cheering for me. When it's working, it's working. And even though what you're functionally doing is I'm trying to track the timing of everything he's doing, and like I said, he blinked slightly. That lets me know it's time to punch. Somehow you're tracking all of that, but you still feel like I'm in the ring.
Well, yeah, and I could easily see a timeline where someone made this game without the crowd in the back, and I'm curious if that would have still worked, because to me that I never noticed it as a kid. It was subliminal, but looking back, the crowd noise and seeing the crowd did make it feel like a performance a little bit. I know it sounds silly being alone in your room playing it, but it was just enough to where I was alone in my room, but I felt like I was, in Vegas and I was, at the MGM Grand or something like that.
Yeah. So we'll talk about the fights in a minute, but let me talk about one other element that I really like in this game, which is Doc Lewis.
Yeah.
He is your trainer. He is Stanley from The Office. That's who he looks like. If they ever make a movie, that's who they have to cast, because 100%. it's a 1-to-1 correspondence between those two faces.
Yeah.
And he's filling, he's Mickey from Rocky. He's your trainer. He's in the corner, and he will give you advice. Actually, if you're doing really well, he'll just tell you you're doing awesome. But if you haven't been just cleaning the other guy's clock, he will tell you things that are, kind of subtle hints as to what you need to do. So he gives you little timing things, and then between circuits, there's like 3 fights, and then you go to the next circuit, or 4, whatever the number is. Between these circuits, you go like running through the streets of New York by Battery Park with him. And he's on a bike and you're running after him. Kind of again shades of Rocky, but he adds a great deal of personality as well.
He's great, and there's more lore to this game than you would know if you just played it. But I think in the instruction booklet they talked about this, or maybe later there was some other stuff. But like the idea behind Doc Lewis is that he was his former boxer, and then he was drinking, and then like Little Mac is his way to kind of get back in the game and prove that he's still got what it takes to be a coach or a manager, whatever they call him.
Yeah, and I would say if people are listening to this and they're into retro games, but they didn't live through this time period, if you decide, hey, I'm going to pick up an old NES game and try it, do yourself a favor and try to track down the instruction manual, at a minimum the text of it, because often that was where you would find this stuff. It wouldn't be on the screen. Like you would have to read that to get some of this like flavor or lore. I think I read something that, like he discovered you somewhere and said, started training you, which again, you're 17. So he saw a 17-year-old kid and is like, I want to get this kid's face mashed in. That's what I want to do.
Well, I think something very similar happened to Mike Tyson himself. His trainer's name is escaping me off the top of my head, but he's this famous guy who trained a lot of boxers, and I think he met Tyson when he was like 16 or something, and was like a kid on the street, and he was like, no, you should use these hands to get money, to get paid, to be a fighter.
Mm-hmm. Well, it worked out well for him.
Yeah, he's doing fine.
Yeah. I think. I don't know. He could have blown all his money. He could have gone down that path. I have no idea.
I've seen a lot of interviews with him because of the big fight that he had, the big bullshit fight that he had last year with Jake Paul, and like he's doing great. He's doing just
all
great.
right. I'm sure he got paid for The Hangover as well. He did all right.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about what actually happens in this game. So we're not going to go through every little minor thing for the fighter. If you want to walk through, go to GameFAQs.com and find that stuff. But
sure.
Let's talk about the experience of doing this. So you fire up the game, you're in the first circuit, and you go up against your tutorial fighter, Glass Joe.
Yeah, and I would say other than Tyson himself, Glass Joe might be the most famous character from this game. He's just, because he's a take on Glass Jaw, which, is a term in boxing for being weak. I feel like Glass Joe is like, he's almost like a meme. Like if someone's being like weak, it's like, stop being a Glass Joe kind of thing.
Yeah, he's really fun. He's so wimpy. I think if you look at his stats, he's like 1 in 99.
1 in 99.
Yeah. Right. They don't even hide it. Like I think they made him French on the joke of like, well, they surrender, they're weak, right?
Yeah.
So
there's nothing else French about him that I can see.
Did they play? I think they play the Marseillaise when he comes out of his corner.
Yeah.
And you commence to have your first fight. And so the way fights work, so you've got right hooks and left hooks. You can do uppercuts, either fist. You can put your gloves up to block. Put your gloves up to block, and you can also duck down to try and dodge blows below or dodge to the left and the right. So that's what you've got. And if you land a blow at a certain time, if you're lucky and skilled, you will get a star for like a particularly well-timed punch. And you can have up to 3 stars. Those stars can be used. They're a consumable resource for like a mega uppercut.
Yep. Yeah, that's your big punch, and you don't have to use stars to beat the game, but almost any good run is you're gonna need those stars,
especially as the guys get harder. Yeah, and the trick
definitely.
And the trick to that is there's a kind of a wind up to it. So you can't just deploy it at any time. You're going to get hit. So you have to kind of know, again, when you've created a window to use that safely. You've knocked him around a few times, and if I hit it now, he will in fact connect with the other guy's jaw before taking an interrupt.
And if you dodge to the left or the right, that's free. But if you block with your gloves, you lose a heart, and you only get so many hearts per round. And once you run out of hearts, you can no longer punch. You can only dodge to the left or the right at that point until you dodge enough punches where you can get your hearts back, and then you can start punching again.
Yeah, that's your stamina. And so landing punches on your opponent uses no stamina. But if the opponent blocks your punch, that uses up stamina. And of course, getting hit takes it away as well. So the idea is, by not actually landing successful blows on your opponent, you get tired. And your guy, like, poor little Mac turns like purple and is like, his shoulders get hunched over. He's like, ugh. And so, you have to just dodge out of the way for a little while until you kind of get your second wind and you can go back to punching again.
Yeah.
This is, I think, really effective. Like there's something about that like rhythm that like you feel like, oh no, not now. I'm tired. I gotta, come on, man. I want you eating thunder and crap and lightning.
Well, as you said, the mechanics are they flow so well because you have so many options, right? There's 5 different types of punches. There's 3 different types of block ducks kind of thing, and that was a lot for a little 2-button plus a directional pad controller.
Yeah, and then the start button, I believe, is what deploys the Mega Punch.
Yep.
And that's it. Those are your tools. So you'd fight Glass Joe doing this. He doesn't really have much in the way of like a special move, because most of these characters will have something where it's kind of like, oh, get ready, here it comes. He does not. You are meant to beat this guy down easily, which is why he probably is one of the more famous characters from it, is everybody beat this guy.
Famously, Mike Tyson said in an interview he couldn't beat Glass Joe when he tried to play the game.
Wow.
I don't know if that's true, but he definitely said it.
I know recently he was on Fallon. I think it was Jimmy Fallon show, some nighttime talk show, and they had him play. They hacked or used the passcode or whatever, so he would go directly to playing himself.
Jesus.
Not surprisingly, he got taken down pretty quick.
Yeah, as anyone would.
So we finish off Glass Joe easily, and we are treated to the next fighter, Von Kaiser.
Oh yeah, from France to Germany. We're going from the guy who's got a weak chin to the German efficiency man. Big old mustache too.
Yeah, giant handlebar mustache. Like they're like literally the Kaiser. That's what they're going for with this guy.
Oh yeah.
And he's like all kinds of like twitchy, like his mustache twitching, his eyebrows twitching. And I'm trying to remember, like, generally that was a lot of it, was just like recognizing when those twitches were happening, kind of told you when to strike.
And I believe he only has 2 punches in his arsenal. It's mostly jabs, and then occasionally he'll do a hook.
I think, is he the one that's like, you punch him, he punches you? I'm trying to remember. Because there's one person where it's like, you got to like, you punch him and then you immediately have to get out of the way or block, because that's kind of how it works. Like he's responding to what you do a little more.
Might have been him. I don't remember that. I know that's definitely true later with Sandman for sure.
Yeah. So again, this one's also pretty much a scrub. It's not until you get to the next one up, which is Piston Honda, that like now it starts getting serious.
And Piston Honda's sprite is even bigger, way bigger than Von Kaiser, or so he's the first giant. And he's a preview of what Tyson's sprite's going to look like. So, he looks intimidating.
Yeah, he's a gigantic guy. He's, of course, Japanese themed. But his deal is, like, he's got this, like, series of punches that, like, he'll just boom, 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 huge punch. And once you're, like, trapped in that, it's a knockout. Oh, we didn't talk about how the knockout system works. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So if you get knocked out 3 times in one round, that's a TKO. Same for your opponents. If you get knocked out, you can mash the buttons as Mario counts to 10, and you can hopefully get back up. And one of the interesting things about the way this works is when it's happening, like, you feel so frantic as you're trying to, like, desperately get up. You feel that, and it's like but it's all mathematics. It's like how whether you're going to get back up or not.
Yeah, and if you can get back up, depending on what circuit you're in, if you get back up at between certain seconds, you get more health refill when you get back in the game. So I can't remember. It's like, I think the major circuit, if you get back up on 9, you get the highest refill, and the minor circuit's up on 1 or 2, something like that.
Yeah, but one of the things Piston Honda does, because he has this like series of death punches, that it's like the game is telling you can't just kind of like work your way through these. Like, there's going to be some pattern in here that you must solve this puzzle to get around, because otherwise he will definitely do this enough times where you will lose. He will take you out unless you find the way to, and the way to do it is there's a moment just before he lands the first one. If you get in your punch, you just knock him the hell down.
Yes, I'd say most people especially when they're making their way through this first time, are not going to figure that out. They're going to more figure out the dodge and counter punch, which you can beat Piston Honda if you just dodge and counter. But he shows you, and you could do it with the other 2 as well, that there are certain times where if you punch before they do, you actually do more damage or instantly knock them down. Yeah,
there's several of these, right, where that's part of it. Is like they have, not only are there like things that they can do to you, but there's things you can do to them if you know when and where to do it.
Yeah.
So we take him out, and then that's completes the minor circuit. We have we go for a run with Doc Lewis to Battery Park.
And this is beautiful animation, by the way. Seeing New York, because as a kid growing up in Fort Worth, Texas, I'd seen New York in movies, but to see it in animation like this, and especially with the Rocky-esque kind of feeling, and I was a huge Rocky fan as a kid, so it was just like, I love these little cut twos. Also, it was a great time to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, you can't skip him, but he's like running in a tracksuit. They do a good job with again, parallax for the NES is tricky, but they make it sort of feel like, the ocean is like the closer parts of the ocean are moving at a different rate than the stuff that's farther away. And, it gives you a little flavor between, because otherwise all you're going to be looking at is that boxing ring. So like they need to vary it up a little.
Yeah, and then it ends on the Statue of Liberty, which, again, animated pretty well. And then it gives you a pass key, which I don't think it was the first game to do this, but it was early on because, some of these games, the hardest part, like Zelda 2, we mentioned recently on the Zelda podcast not too long ago, was if you died at the furthest reach of the game, you had to start all the way over the beginning palace, right? And it was just like, it was like, why? It was unnecessary. And so Mike Tyson's Punch-Out said, if you get so far, we're going to give you the key to skip straight to it so you don't have to just beat all these guys over and over and over again.
Right. Metroid had this, a password system.
Yep. Mega Man 2. Yeah.
Right. And so this was definitely like a playground thing of like, hey, man, I have the pass key that will get you to this circuit. Because in the days before the internet, that was how you had to do it. Somebody managed to get that far, and they would share that with everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, everybody had them.
It's not my memory. It's 007 something, but the pass key to go straight to Mike Tyson. There was a time where it was as memorized as anything in my head because I was trying to beat him. So I would just enter that pass key anytime I went to play it, so I could just play him and try and beat him over and over. And it was just like that pass key was almost as burned into my memory as up, down, left, right, BA, select, start.
Yeah, I'm glad they did that because, as you said, if you had to start back at Glass Joe every time,
yes,
it'd be I mean, not only would that be annoying, but it would be an actual, I think, a gameplay problem because the key here is the only way you're going to get past one of these guys is to solve the puzzle. And the only way you're going to do that is to spend time solving the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
You have to be able to iterate on this quickly. Like, oh, I lost a fight. Well, then I should be able to get back up and try it again until I figure it out. So when I was playing it to get ready for this podcast, I was able to take advantage of the fact that the Switch, I can create a save state. And just like, if I lost to Piston Honda, I don't need to go back to Von Kaiser and fight my way back up. I'll just, go back to my point in time just before the fight started and try it again. And just feel like, is that cheating? I guess technically, but whatever. It's a toy. Play with it how you like. Yeah. So we go to the major circuit and we have our fight with Don the Flamenco.
Dun, dun, dun.
This guy's a breeze, but like the whole, again, the presentation that he comes out with a rose and he's just so dandy. They convey that so well with all the sprite work.
Well, he's a breeze once you learn his pattern, but like any of these puzzles, trial and error can get a little frustrating with him because he'll block things and he'll hit you, and you can hit him so many times. If you don't know to alternate your punches left to right, then you don't know that you can keep on the ropes and then eventually hit him. He was very frustrating. I remember when I was learning the pattern.
I don't know why. For some reason, I had no trouble with him this time out, but I definitely had a lot more trouble when I went after him, which is King Hippo. And this is he's also one of the most memorable fighters because, he's a big fat dude with a couple of Band-Aids over his belly button.
He's the closest thing this game has to a non-human character. Like, he's a person, but he's almost like the Blanca of Street Fighter 2 kind of thing of they say somewhere in the Pacific Islands is where he's from, and they don't know his age and they don't know his weight, and he's got this mystery about him. But he's also got, once you figured out his pattern is so by the numbers, and he'll never get up. If you knock him, you only have to knock him down once, and he's done.
Right, but the way he works is you will never land a blow on him. Nope. So unlike Piston Honda, where, for example, you could manage to beat him without learning the magic interrupt to really knock him down, here you must solve the puzzle. You will never ever do any damage to him until you figure out what to do, and it's subtle, right? Because his face will his sprite, the black sprite or pixels, will flash, purple for just a moment. And that lets hit him now. And when you hit him in his face, he his pants fall down a little bit, revealing that his belly button with the bandage on it. And you just go to town hitting that until he does it again. Otherwise, you just have to dodge and wait for that opening to happen. And that's what will ultimately take him out. But like, I remember sitting there this time again going like, I don't remember how to make this happen. I know I got to punch him in his stupid belly button, but nothing's working. And it took me quite a while of fighting to finally notice like, what's that flash? Oh, that must be something. It can't be nothing. So I'm going to hit him.
It's funny that you mentioned the flash. I don't remember the flash. What I remember is that when he raises his fist, his mouth opens. And when his mouth opens, that's what you, like, I just remember hit the open mouth.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember the other flash.
Yeah, well, sometimes when he raises his glove up, he's covering his mouth. So you have to kind of wait. Oh, now he's doing it. His glove is so high that it's not directly in front of his face. Go for it. And then, wail on him. You mentioned a non-human character. You know, in the Wii version of Punch-Out, the last fighter I think it's a secret thing you can unlock is Donkey Kong. So you can fight a gorilla.
Oh, yeah.
You know who else wanted to fight a gorilla? Mike Tyson.
Hey, yeah.
So there you go.
The thing is, Mike Tyson, the way he was so good was he put fear into his opponents. He was never going to make a gorilla afraid of him. He would have get destroyed.
Yeah, I forget what the circumstances were, but he was going to like pay $10,000 so he could fight a gorilla.
Bad move.
No, don't do it.
Glad they didn't let him do that.
No, the gorilla would not understand what is happening. So he
And
would probably
murder
be very upset. And then, yes, murder Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Correctly, by the way. I would be rooting for the gorilla in that scenario.
100%. That's a Darwin Award.
Oh, yeah. I want to pay $10,000 to fight an endangered species that can kill me. Yes. Who could I possibly root for in that scenario? So we kill King Hippo. No, we don't kill him. We knock him down. By the way, did you watch Captain N, the Game Master?
I was going to mention one of the reasons why he's one of the most famous characters is probably due to Captain N, the Game Master, because he was a great part of that show as Mother Brain's #1 henchman.
I was going to say, I think we've now ticked off most of the Captain N cast, believe it or not, through this podcast, because we've done Mega Man. We've done Simon Belmont. We did Castlevania. We've now done King Hippo. You haven't heard it yet, Rich, but we recorded an episode on Super Metroid, so that takes care of Mother Brain. And we did Zelda.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
that takes care of Link. So who's left? Kid Icarus? I think that's it.
And I believe the princess was Princess of Mario when we did Super Mario 3, so I think we covered her too.
Is she Princess Peach? I wasn't sure. I know she's a
couldn't
princess.
remember.
She might be like a princess who's like specific to the TV show.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if she's a specific game. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I watched Captain N. And I'm guessing it doesn't hold up.
It's not good.
No. But shout out to our friend Josh Koval of the Still Loading podcast. He's been on many times before. God bless him. He's put in the hard work of covering like episode by episode coverage of that on his show.
Wow.
So he would know the answer. So we dispatched King Hippo and we come to the one where I got stymied on my recent playthrough, Great Tiger.
Oh, Great Tiger, right, yes. The only magic in the whole game.
Well, again, stereotype, right? Oh, he's from India. He can charm snakes and, he's blonde, not Blanca, Dalsim, right? He can do
He's Dalsim, 100%. Like, I mean, if you look at Street Fighter 2 and Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, I mean, you can draw the parallels so easy.
Yeah. But what he does is this bullshit move where he like... Yeah, you're doing your job, right? You're punching him, you're noticing all the patterns, and then he like kind of crouches in the middle of the ring and then like teleports around the ring in a circle. And when you have to punching you every time he goes around the circle, and you have to just memorize this and get the rhythm down so that every time he's right there, you block at just the right time. Yeah. And it sucks. It's very hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. But other than that punch, he's actually he's got the same sprite as Kaiser. So like, as long as you can dodge the, I can't remember what the punch is called that he does when he's moving around the thing, but like, as long as you can take care of that, the rest of him is pretty simple.
Yeah. But you do, again, just like with some of these, like you must solve the puzzle because otherwise you're going to get hit enough to get knocked out. And most likely you won't be able to deal enough damage to him to win that race of like, you knock him out before he does this to you 3 times.
No, at this point in the game, there is no amount of accidental guesswork that is going to beat any boss. I mean, these puzzles have specific keys, and you got to find them.
Right. If you don't master it, you're just not getting through. It's not happening.
Yeah.
So after him is Bald Bull.
Bald Bald Bull, the only character I believe to be in every iteration of Punch-Out from arcades through modern day.
And he's a big, bald Turkish guy with a big mustache.
Yep. And he's tough as nails. And you got to fight him twice.
Yeah, I think there were times, I think when I was younger, that I managed to get past Great Tiger. I don't think I ever made it past Bald Bull.
Okay. Yeah. He was tough, but again, once you learn those patterns, and particularly with him, he's got this bull charge where there's got to be a comedy sketch in here that someone's done before. It's too obvious not to. If someone like showing what this would look like in real life, because he's this big guy, but he crouches down like to the ground, like on his like a baseball catcher would, and then he like hops down on his feet in the crouch down position until he punches you, and he calls it a bull charge. It's very it's scary in the game, but if you think about it in real life, it's actually kind of pretty silly.
Yeah, again, with the limitations of the NES, right? They're doing what they can with this animation, and fortunately, whether it's intentional comedy or unintentional comedy, it still works.
It's great.
It's like, yeah, again, it's really entertaining, even if it's kicking your ass.
And I would say, maybe King Hippo and Glass Joe are more famous characters, but the Bull Charge is definitely the most famous punch in the game.
And I believe this is another one, like you throw a punch at the right time during this, you hit him as he's on his way, approaching you, and he just goes down like a light, right?
It's the only way, because he will keep bull charging until either the round runs out, he knocks you out, or you knock him out. So you have to know to counter that punch, and you have to know when to do it. Yeah.
But we knock him out because we're just going to assume we did well in this podcast. And we get another run by Battery Park, and it's time for the World Circuit. And here they start bringing back some people you fought before. So like first up is Piston Honda again.
Yes.
And every time you do one of these fights against someone you fought before, it's mostly the same with a few added little tweaks here and there thrown in.
Well, they're tougher. Like their records are different. They're in a different circuit, and they're a little harder to beat now. They've got less weaknesses than they used to, and a few more moves than they had. Can we just back up real quick for a second, because I believe in the training montage between these two that it's at night.
Yes.
And what a simple fix to just not show us the same screen we already showed, but to show us the same screen at night. And it works. It's like, it does feel like I'm passing through time. And then at the end, the Statue of Liberty looks ghostly, like it's black with like these white skeleton lines in it. I don't think that was intentional, but it looks scary as hell. So anyway, I just thought that was fun.
Yeah, and literally all they did was swap the light blue color of the day for a dark blue color of the night, but it feels different. Like
it works.
It works. So yeah, we fight Piston Honda again and get past him to Soda Popinski, as you said.
Originally Vodka Drunkinski, but I guess they thought for the Famicom in Japan that that would not fly. However, and I don't think we've talked about this much, but if you don't beat the opponent in round one, then in between rounds they'll have different little sayings that they'll say to you. And Soda Popinski, I've got some of his right here. He says some great stuff. One of them was what I started with, of like, I drink to prepare for a fight, and tonight I'm very prepared, right? And so he's still got these sayings as if he's drinking alcohol, but it's like, no, okay, interesting.
And they also have different portraits for both you and for the fighter. So if whoever's been getting their ass kicked, will have like bumps and bruises and stuff. They'll look like they've been beat up. Which is great. If they haven't been taking that many blows, they look like themselves. And as we said, this is where Doc gives you advice on what to do. And otherwise, they're giving you these little taunts and stuff, and it's great.
And the other thing, Doc's hand is like patting your shoulder, and if you hit select, you can only do it once per fight. But if you hit select, he'll pat faster, and you'll get more of a refill when the round comes back.
I love that there's all these little secret mechanics and things in the game like that. I sent you a link to that one thing where there was like, you have to watch like the bearded guy in the crowd who's tiny, but if you actually notice it, like it gives you a clue of like when to do certain things.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of little things like that, but I would also say that like a lot of gamers like me probably didn't notice those things as much as they just felt the timing more. It was like, because these things happen within frames, so they're like less than a second. So our conscious mind isn't getting it, but our subconscious mind is feeling it. So it's like, we know to duck now. We don't know exactly what happened, but we know something happened. Like you said, there was a little flash or whatever. But there are mechanics that will tell you exactly if you know where to look for them.
Right. And as you said, that whole thing of like, if you're trying to get up from being knocked out, depending on when in Mario's count you get back up, it governs how much health you get back. Yeah, really, really cool, subtle things that the game does not obliquely communicate to you.
I can't remember which fighter it is, but one fighter in the between rounds says, "Hey ref, nice hair," or something like that. And if you knock him down, Mario will count much slower. Yeah, and there's a few things with the ref to where he'll like hometown advantage someone, or like he'll count slower, count faster. Yeah, just different things like that. And it's like, this game has a lot of nuance to it that you could easily miss, that I missed as a kid, and until researching it, I was like, I didn't know half this shit.
Yeah, a lot of it is stuff that people found either through sheer luck or mostly by like actually digging into the code.
Yeah,
to figure out how it works. So we fight Bald Bull again, we fight Don Flamenco again, and we come up against Mr. Sandman. This guy, yeah.
Tough. He's so tough. He's insanely tough. I would say he is the hardest other than Tyson. And even though there's another guy between him, no. Sandman is the hardest fucking opponent.
Explain why that is.
There's no... you can't get a star on him in I think the first or second round. Like, the game just won't allow it, no matter what you do. If you try and punch him, he will almost always get out of the way and counterpunch immediately. You have to stun him first, and he takes if you punch him in certain ways, it takes less. It takes either 3 or even 1 damage point off of him. Like, so your punches do so little, and his punches will knock half your power out. So he's just, and then he's got the Dreamland Express, I believe is the name of the punch, where it's these 3 uppercuts that happen, boom, boom, boom. And you can dodge them, but you have to your window for each dodge is only a handful of frames. And you got to get it perfect, because any one of those on their own will knock you down no matter where your health is.
Yeah, I watched a playthrough of this. I think this guy got through the entire game in 33 minutes, something like that. And I was watching this going like, damn, like even this guy who was obviously very, very good at this game was struggling. He didn't get knocked down, but you could see you almost hear the flop sweat as he was trying to get through this one. You could see this is very hard, even for, I think, the seasoned veterans.
I'm that nerd that will watch speedrunners just kind of when I'm bored, and I'm just like, I just want to watch someone speed through, and Punch-Out's one of my favorite speed throughs. And it is rare to see even the best speed gamers not take damage from Sandman.
Again, part of that is just your punches do so little, right? Yeah. So you have to play the game at a certain level of skill and excellence for longer, right? Do this delicate, difficult thing as long as you can. So, yeah, really, really tough with this guy. But if you manage to get your way past him, you get to Super Macho Man, who I believe was the last fighter in the roster for the original arcade version of Punch-Out.
Yeah, the original arcade, I believe, had 6 fighters total. Bald Bull was one of them, and Super Macho Man was the big guy. And, you think about, like, people aren't going to spend as much time in arcade as they are at a home console, so they didn't need near as many fighters for it back then. But I was glad that, because I think all the original fighters from the original arcade did make it into at least one of the iterations of Punch-Out, if not several. One thing we didn't mention earlier with Soda Popinski that we can mention here is that him and Macho Man are the only 2 sprites that look like that. So you've had, Piston Honda and Von Kaiser and all the same sprites over and over. And then you see, well, King Hippo was original, but, and then you see Soda Popinski's huge. He just even looks more massive. And then Super Macho Man is this big guy, and he's got this big hair, and he taunts you. And it's, he's, as I would say that Sandman is harder, but barely. This guy's still a monster.
Yeah, and so we talked about this a little bit. So like when the character gets up from their corner and kind of makes their way into the ring, their animation has some personality to it. So Don Flamenco, like I said, has a rose and he's kind of dancing his way in. This guy just stands up and he does the pectoral muscle like dance flex, and he does it a few times. And you think he's going to do something else, and there's just like a little pause, and he's like, I'm going to do it some more. Yeah. That kind of just tickled me. I thought that was really funny that like they were like, no, he's just going to keep doing that. That said so much about what a dick he is.
Oh, he's such a dick. And I thought this as a kid, and I still think this is an adult. When he's doing the peck thing, he's looking at the camera, face forward completely. He's got like a vampire look, kind of.
He's looking at you.
Like, he's looking at you, but he's got like his black hair behind him almost looks like a cape, and he's got like these almost look like two like fangs like for teeth. So he looks like a vampire. And then when he gets his hands up and he's walking towards you, his face is a little bit to the side. He kind of looks like a horse. And I don't know if that's just random in my brain putting images in, but like this guy is he goes from scary vampire to scary horse.
Yeah, he is horse face. He definitely has that. And again, it's almost like he doesn't have a gimmick. His gimmick is he just punches you hard a lot, and it does crazy amounts of damage. So you again just have to learn to get out of the way of this shit. Like it's less. It feels like it's less gimmicky.
Well, and then he's got the spin punch.
Yeah,
and the spin punch can go up to, I believe, 8 rotations. So you have to duck, and you have to dodge to the left to beat the spin punch. So you have to dodge to the left 8 times in a row. Very few frames of, you only have so much time to do it, and you don't know how many times he's going to do it. So he might do it 4, or he might do it 5, 6, 7, or 8. So at any given time, and if you keep going to the side after he's done it, you might miss your window to have all the counter punches afterwards. So this guy was frustrating.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like I said, I never made it this far myself, and even just watching it, like vicariously, you could see like this is very grueling, and the margins for error are very, very tiny.
The most frustrating thing about this guy was that before you had any passcodes, when you're working your way up, if you lost to him, you had to fight Sandman again.
Right, that's what it does. If you lose, it knocks you back to the previous fight, which good God. Again, you have to do this. I mean, you have to spend time in the ring with Super Macho Man to learn the pattern. And if the punishment for failing is you got to go back to Sandman just to get a chance to get back to Macho Man and learn some more. Like, God bless you, Rich, for getting this far.
I mean, it was being a sickly kid at home alone helped to log lots and lots of hours over and over and over. But yeah, I believe so. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the first circuit minor is 3 boxers, and then the second circuit is 4, but then this circuit is 6. Correct. And you only got the pass key at the end of a circuit. So that was so frustrating about getting to Tyson's. You had to beat all these 6 boxers basically in a row.
Yeah, really, really tough to do that. But your reward, and this time it's not going for a run with Doc. It's like your name in the paper. You see this big splashy newspaper, it's talking about how awesome you are. You see a little picture of Mario down in the corner. It's a cute little image. Anything from this newspaper thing you want to talk about before we move on?
Oh, there's just a random Easter egg in there that I have no idea what it, but it's like someone's looking for their dad. Like, I can't find my dad or something like that. And
it's next to Mario's picture, which seems, I'm not sure what that's meant to imply. Mario can't find his dad, or, someone's looking for Mario. Some kid who thinks Mario is his father.
My guess is that someone at Nintendo was just like, let's just fuck with him and make him wonder what this means.
Yeah, sometimes it's weird translation stuff. You never know.
Oh, sure. I am error.
Yeah. But this, of course, is now you can take on the Dream Fight.
The Dream Fight.
Which in the original, of course, is with Mike Tyson, and later on it is with Mr. Dream after the name and likeness rights are gone.
Yeah. But when it's tight, and, I didn't have the other game with Mr. Dream. I did play it, I think, a couple of times, but, trash. I know it's the same, but there was something there weren't a lot of licensed games back then. And there was something about this heavy, undisputed, you mentioned heavyweight champion of the world earlier, but one thing about Mike Tyson that was record-breaking was he was the undisputed. There were 3 different belts where you could be champion in boxing back then, and he was the first guy to unify all 3 and be a heavyweight in all 3. So they call him the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, and it was like he was everywhere in the news. You couldn't get away from him, and so you're a kid and you're playing this game and you're like, I'm playing the world's greatest boxer right now, and it's not just his moves and his sprite, it's the personality that mattered.
Well, and the other thing is, like, obviously you see all of these. There's the sprite that you see in the ring, and then there's the sprite that you see, the image that they show, before when you're like, again, in your corner or whatever. And usually, like, these characters, they look like, not Disney cartoons, but they're cartoonish looking.
Yeah.
Like, Sandman actually looks to me like a Simpsons drawing a little bit. He looks like
very much so.
Drederick Tatum, who's the Simpsons
absolutely
version of Mike
100%.
Tyson. But Mike Tyson looks like Mike Tyson. They tried to go for realism, except in one respect, which is that, like, his eyes are black, and it's terrifying. Like, he wasn't scary enough. Now he's got these, like, 8-ball hemorrhages.
Yeah. Kid Dynamite. We need to make him a little scarier.
Exactly. And you fight him, and as you said, Rich, like this, I mean, he doesn't let up. He's got so few windows, and you do so little damage to him every time you hit him. It is an immense credit to someone's skill if they manage to take him down.
So in real boxing, there's essentially 2 types of fighters, and I don't remember the exact terms for them, but essentially there's some fighters that have the most power when they're up close, and other fighters that have the most power when they're far away, right? And so Mike Tyson was a brawler. He wanted to get in there and just beat the shit out of his opponents as fast as possible. And the reason he lost the title to Buster Douglas in 1990 was because Buster Douglas was the first guy he fought that didn't let that first few rounds of intimidation go. And he just kept Mike Tyson, he just stayed on his feet and kept Mike Tyson punching and wore him out. So that by the time, I think it was around 8 or 9, whatever it was, that he finally knocked Mike Tyson out, Tyson didn't do anything wrong. His strategy had been working. It's just this guy found the key to it. And it's the same pattern, coincidentally, because this fight with Buster Douglas wouldn't happen for 3 years later after this game came out. But that if the only way to beat Tyson is to weather that first round, you just have to dodge. And then he gets a little slower and not quite as unpredictable in the second round and the third round. And that's when, I mean, it's hard as hell, don't get me wrong, but like to beat him in the first round is extremely hard. Only the best gamers can do it. But like for regular kids, you weren't beating him till the second or third round ever.
Yeah, that's the Homer Simpson boxing.
Yep,
technique,
just take
right?
the punches. Well, and Rocky Balboa too.
Yeah, you wear them out, right? You just take the abuse until they're tired, and then you hit them in the head, and they're down.
Yeah, it ain't about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit. Keep coming back for more.
I'll fight the fight.
One more round.
Yeah. Well, we've only done Rocky 4 on this podcast. We should do another Rocky movie at some point.
Any Rocky any day, sir.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it. You beat Mike Tyson. He instead of taunting you, he congratulates you and tells you what a great job you've done and how impressed he is. And then we get a quick little classic NES thing. They show you pictures of everybody you fought, and that's the end of the game.
Yep.
An ending that virtually no one I know, except maybe you, has seen with their own eyes.
Oh, well, I called some of my old friends and they could tell you. But I think I only beat the game once, to be fair. But I tried about 1,000 times. But the Tyson fight, he moves so fast and he's so unpredictable, and any of his uppercuts will completely knock you down, even if you're at full health. But then when you beat him and he says great job, kid, or whatever he says, it's uplifting. And that's the whole game. The whole game isn't about fuck you. It's about, we want to train you to be the best. We want you to start with Glass Joe and work your way up. And yeah, some of these guys are assholes and they'll taunt you along the way. But we want you to be the champion. And if you bought the game, I don't know if you know this, but what came with it was a letter from Mike Tyson himself addressed to you, the gamer. And it was in that letter was like his tenets for how he became champion. It was like, don't give up, believe in yourself. You know, it was the same kind of trite stuff that you'd hear a lot. But when you're 7 and you're reading this letter in your video game that was written by the world champion, obviously, you know, it wasn't to you. Everyone got the same one. But I don't know. It's this. I think one of the reasons this game is so lasting and impactful is because it makes you feel good when you do good.
So tell me about the moment where you actually did finally beat Mike Tyson for the first time. Like, how old were you? Like, were you by yourself? Like, tell me the story.
I was 9 years old. I was home with strep throat, which kind of happened to me a lot. I was a pretty sickly kid. And, you know, I was running fever, but I think I was tail end of it. So I was like starting to feel a little bit better. So instead of just laying in bed and watching TV, I could sit upright and play video games. And I remember I was still sick, so I wasn't feeling good. So I just wanted to distract myself. And I played over and over all day. And it was about 4 or 5 in the afternoon, something like that. And I'd just been code Tyson. No, I went one word about any of the rest of the game at that point. And I knocked him down a second time, and there was still time left in the third round. And I thought, holy shit, this could be it. And when I knocked him down, as I said, I was sick, but I screamed. I was like, Mom, get the camera. You got to prove this. And yeah, that's my memory of it. And then, of course, once the picture was developed, I showed it to all my friends. Like, I have proof. I did it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I've had that experience with games. You know, one of this game's most notable descendants is actually the FromSoft series, right? Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Because those games, the bosses, they're not quite as much pattern recognition machines as these are, where it's like the only way to beat them. But generally, that is a lot of it. They are very hard. They're intimidating as fuck, and again, their reputation is that they're much harder than they actually are when you actually start playing them and get used to them. But that first time, but when, I remember Bloodborne was my first one, and you fight this hideous monster. The first boss, the boss you're most likely to run into in the game first. There's actually 2. You could go to one of 2, but you go to the cleric beast, and he's this, enormous, kind of werewolf type creature, but it's huge. It's the size of a dinosaur. And it's jumping all over the place and screeching at you and clawing at you and grabbing you. And I thought, like, okay, I guess that's what these games are. I'm never going to beat this. But you know what? I'm going to persevere. And when I finally did it, again, the first boss in the game, I felt like, oh my God, I finally did it. This is
King
doable.
of the world.
King of the world. Then I fell in love with that series and that developer. I've played through many of them now, and they're, they're hard. They are very hard, but they can be done. Like, you can figure out what to do and get used to them. But like, all of that comes back to this. Like, it's that same feeling of like, I'm giving you this gauntlet that you're going to have to figure out how to beat, not just by, again, just muscling your way through. Like, you're going to have to think and stay on your toes and really watch these patterns carefully in order to figure out, okay, when's my opening to strike? Where, what technique should I use here and when? And that's some of the best stuff I think games can do, is make you feel like, just punching a thing isn't that interesting, but feeling like I can outsmart the game a little bit, right? Find the weak points the developers have laid out for me. When you find all those things, you feel like, yes, I've bested this beast or this boxer, right? There's that incredible feeling that these games have.
Absolutely. I mean, this game is a Gordian knot, and when you're able to finally untie it all, and it's so satisfying. And as you said, from the replay, like, and I still replay this game, like, to this day, but not often, but every once in a while I'll be like, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to just, in the same way I'd like to rewatch an old movie, I'd like to just replay through. And I'm not as good as I used to. I'm not going to get to Tyson. I'm not even going to get close, but it still is it's a puzzle, and it's a fun puzzle, and it's not just a fun puzzle. It's a puzzle with personalities. Like you said, wrestling, whether it's, wrestling or sketch comedy or superheroes, whatever. It's like, we remember the personalities. We remember Glass Joes and King Hippos and Bald Bulls, and those, they're fun to figure out, and they're also like fun to just kind of be in a game with.
I think that's a perfect summation. that's what this is, right? This is time spent in the ring with kind of familiar faces, and again, that feeling of like being David and beating Goliath over and over again. So
yep, absolutely.
Yep. All right. Well, I'm glad we spent our time talking about Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Another just absolute classic. I'm glad we've entered into the repository that is this podcast. So, Rich, if people want to find your awesome stuff, where do they find it?
I'd love if you are interested in improv classes online. You can take it from anywhere. Online is fun. Improv when your teacher is great, and I'm pretty amazing. Go to richbakercoaching.com. First drop-in's free, so if you want to just check it out, you don't have to pay anything. Come have some fun with us. Love to see you.
And of course, if you like this show, please do drop it a review wherever you found it. That makes a big difference in helping the show's visibility, and telling friends, also good. If you want to get in touch with us, just find us on any social media network of your choice. We're on all the big ones, even the ones that we're not as active on because they're owned by evil billionaires. I still got a presence there. I'll still see the messages you send me because I don't, nice. Why not? That doesn't hurt nobody. So send us messages. Just Google Nostalgium and Facebook or X or Threads, BlueSky, whatever. You'll find us there. And if you want to know what's coming up next, do follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or BlueSky, because every Wednesday I'll post a clue as to what the next week's episode is going to be. So with that, I think that kind of covers everything about Punch-Out. Rich, thanks again for dropping by and bringing another awesome topic for the show.
Always a pleasure, Doug. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, TKO. And that is one more entry in the Nostalgium Arcanum.
Leroy. Yeah. Did you hear about that boy, Mike Tyson? Mike Tyson, he the boy that played football for Montreal. No, you old coot. He a boxer, man. Let me tell you, I went to his fight a couple months ago. I seen him hit that boy. He hit that boy so hard, his head flew off into the 18th row. He had to go get his head out the 18th row. I was in Jeff's crib one night about 8, and we were watching a couple of Mike Tyson fight tapes. Jeff was like, man, you see how hard Mike's punching? Come on, Jeff, the other guy was just lunging. Left, right, another KO. If that was me, I'd have been okay, though. The very next day, I gave Russell a ring with JL and Leor, and we all called Don King. I said, yeah, Don, I got a problem. Tell him, Prince. Yeah, what's up? What you saying? You trying to solve them? Forget the small talk. Let's get to the nitty-gritty. Me and Mike, 2 months. Trump, Atlantic City. Yo, you got this. You gonna bust dude up. Yeah, you can be my trainer. Word up? I'm rough like a freight train, smooth like ice. And yo, Jeff, straight up, I think I can beat Mike Tyson. Man, you can beat him, man. Yo, man, word up. You can beat him, man. You know, I put on a couple pounds, man. We can do this, man. Extra, read all about it. Get this. Fresh Prince challenges Iron Mike Tyson to a fight.
I gotta be honest with you, Homer. I didn't bring you up here to show you my new tar paper.
You didn't?
No. Homer, how would you like to be heavyweight champion of the world?
Oh, sure.
Great. All you gotta do is fight Drederick Tatum. It's this Saturday. Here's your parking pass.
Oh, General. Who's Drederick Tatum, anyway? Is he another hobo?
You know what? I'm gonna have to check on that.
Well, I trust you, Mo. If you say I can beat this guy, then he doesn't stand a chance.
Hey, guys, come on, shut up.
Sorry, champ. It was Jerry.
Champ, do you feel remorse for your crime?
Oh, yes. Believe me, my God. If I could turn back the clock on my mother's stair pushing, I would certainly reconsider it.
Drederick, what do you think of Homer Simpson?
I think he's a good man. I like him. I got nothing against him, but I'm definitely gonna make orphans of his children.
They do have a mother, champ.
Yes, but I would imagine that she would die of grief.
Drederick, over here. Mr. Tatum.
Thank you, but the champ has no time for further queries. This parole hearing is over.
I don't know what he was like.